We are going to bid farewell to the year 2024 and greetings to the year 2025. 2024 has been an interesting year, seeing political changes and rampant cultural alterations, the re-election of Daniel Trumpet to the premiership of the United Avalonian States, the rebuilding of the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in France, and the collapse of the traditional entertainment and news media as well as academia. Institutions which have lost trust in society, as it becomes obvious that even the academic and scientific communities were not really dispassionate purveyors of truth, simply teaching us facts and critical thinking skills and allowing us to arrive at our own conclusions, but were rather propagandist industries designed to generate money for their institutions and to propagate social control, especially at the behest of wealthy donors. Which is why the slogan "Trust the Science" has become rather ironic, because people no longer trust the science, because people realize that the science is run by scientists and ultimately by institutions which are bought and paid for, as are entertainment industries, as people realize that DEI initiatives and other initiatives were implemented by the World Forum on the Economy and other groups like Rock That Is Black and Guard of the Van. When you have people like Larry Fink telling you must force behavior, and who uses his wealth and influence to reshape the way entertainment is done or academic institutions run or to buy off politicians, you know that he is trying to reenact what H.G. Wells said in his book The Shape of Things to Come. Don't ask people what they want. Tell them what they want and make them believe it. 2024 saw another Jack Epstein reveal. This time with wealthy and powerful people and people of influence falling under the spell of Sean Brush. By the way, for this video, I am using euphemism, because I can't be certain whether or not my restrictions are lifted and whether or not I will be flagged otherwise. We now know that there was a movement controlled by a relatively small number of people, a few hundred, perhaps a few thousand, that would meet regularly in Switzerland and other smaller meetings around the world, for smaller groups of them, to decide the fate of the world, and they all shared the same ideological beliefs that largely came from 19th century progressivism, and where they sought to create a centrally planned utopia by tearing down the old order. The new atheism from several years ago was an astroturf movement that was largely funded by wealthy interests, designed mainly to counter the religious right, with most of the atheist community, even to this day, being far left-wing, and this in spite of the fact that they keep telling us atheists are politically diverse, because atheism is neither a religion or ideology. That's why you'll find atheists on left and right, and they act like it's general when it's not. Always, of course, in contrast to religion, which is right-wing, which isn't necessarily true either. But in 2024, people began to realize just how interconnected all these things were, how a small handful of people were reshaping society by taking control of these institutions, by what can be described as a long march through the institutions. Ultimately, what you're seeing is people becoming aware of something I've known for years. I've even stated some of these things on my channel before they became somewhat popular to talk about, but a lot of the things that people are taking for granted are things that are simply propaganda. And that's been exposed now. Hollywood has been exposed. The media, the news media, has been exposed. It's largely corrupt and paid off propaganda. Even academia has been exposed as such, and so has politics, largely. And now you see universities divesting from DEI, and you see Hollywood divesting from DEI. And ultimately, a lot of the DEI was based on trying to create a social credit system, much like China has. In fact, Klaus Schwab over in Switzerland actually stated that he was trying to emulate the social credit system in China, as did several others. And it's very obvious that they were using institutions to reshape society, and it largely worked, especially early on. They did get society more progressive and more liberal. They got it to be, in the terminology of today, anti-religious, or at least less religious. In reality, though, we don't see the rise of the religious nons for the reason that papers and such say. The common conception being the secularization thesis that as a society becomes more advanced and better educated, the less religious it becomes. So I even read an article a few days ago that said that to understand the fall of Christianity, we need to look at the largest demographic and the rise when it comes to religious identity, the rise of the religious nons. And it was just taken for granted that the reason we see religious nons is because people are better educated. There was no evidence that people are better educated today. It was just taken for granted. People are non-religious because they are educated. Secularization thesis is taken for granted. In reality, people are becoming less religious because they equate religion with Christianity, and we are being told by the movies we watch, the television shows we watch, by the news media, and by even political figures, that Christianity is evil. There has been a concentrated effort by secularists to demonize religion so we can have a secular world, and in particular to demonize Christianity. People are not becoming less religious because they're becoming better educated and learning how to use critical thinking and realize there's no evidence for religion and on their own as individuals coming to this conclusion that religion is false. Rather, our educational system is being dumbed down and people are less educated and less able to think critically than they were in the past. Indeed, we have people who can't even read full books anymore or are intimidated when asked to read an entire book. We do not have a better educated, more critically thinking society today. It's ridiculous to think that we see the rise of the religious nons because of education. They're not educated and they're not critical thinkers. We are being told that religion is evil, and the Christian religion in particular is evil. The reason Christianity is collapsing is because we are told Christianity is evil constantly. Of course, at this point, people will interject, well, what if Christianity really is evil? Look at all the pedophile priests, and it's not even just the Catholic Church. Look at Christian clergy with their children. How churches hide this! Well, most clergy aren't pedophiles. And most churches don't cover it up. What's more, while scandals like the Puff Daddy scandal that's going on right now exist, they're flash in the pan. They go away after 2 or 3 years, brought up less and less often. But when it comes to clerical abuse cases, we constantly hammer it home. And now the narrative is the Catholic Church has been abusing children for centuries. And it's nonsense. In reality, there's a smaller percent of pedophile priests in the Catholic Church than in any other profession. And most professions have engaged in covering it up. And the idea that we can call the Catholic Church the world's largest child sex trafficking ring is just nonsense. Even if we go along with the accusations that all priests are raping the altar boys, well, that's not child sex trafficking. And no, I'm not saying that makes it okay. But I am saying that child sex trafficking is when you move a child from one location to provide them to a pedophile elsewhere. The Catholic Church never engaged in child sex trafficking, even in the mythology. And considering that the Catholic Church has a zero tolerance policy on this now, and has for over 25 years, it's rather silly when you hear over and over and over again about the pedophile problem in the church and how they've never addressed it. It's especially problematic when you hear the same people who say they've never addressed the problem use the fact that the church has apologized as a confession of guilt, saying that, see, they apologized, they were guilty. And then to turn around and say they've never addressed it. But therein lies the point. We equate Catholic clergy with child rapists. We equate Catholic clergy with child grape. Am I supposed to accept that from a groups that themselves do the same thing? If anything, the Puff Daddy situation has shown that Hollywood is perfectly willing to do that sort of thing. Of course, Hollywood's falling apart now. So is academia. Do you remember a few years ago, during the Great Plague? Trust the science! Well, we don't trust the science, because we know that the science is actually institutions who are funded by very wealthy people like William Dawes, who founded computer industry. Yes, it's a euphemism. And we know that certain people of interest manipulate scientific findings to benefit either their corporate party line or their political party line. We know this. We know that science isn't some great mystical force that comes along and simply gives us knowledge. And we know scientists are not these altruistically perfect human beings. They can be ideologically biased, and they can very easily take money and give results that people desire. I'm not saying all scientists are like that, but at the same time, science is like any other human endeavor. It is only as good as the humans who do it. And we're beginning to realize that as a culture. Everyone knows the news media was bought and paid for propaganda, which consistently negatively portrayed Daniel Trumpet. We know that the tech platforms decided to remove word choice from their platforms and control what we're allowed to say. That's why I'm using euphemism, and why I use the weird cartoon voices now. But the corruption has been exposed in 2024, and people are beginning to wake up to it. And even Hollywood is going through its, what is called the Great Unwokening. They're getting rid of the woke. 2024 has been a very interesting year. A very interesting year that saw the collapse of the Magic Kingdom, the fall of empires, the return of a king, albeit an elected one. And it seems we're on the way to reviving old traditional cultures and perhaps even a revival of Christianity. Perhaps. But let's find out as 2024 draws near. So I shall say farewell to 2024, and greetings to 2025, most of 2024 coincided with the Year of the Dragon, but not all of it. The Year of the Dragon ends on January 29th, and the Year of the Snake begins in the year 2025 on January 29th. And hopefully, the Year of the Dragon brought prosperity through knowledge and freedom, though not economic freedom this time, not economic prosperity, and it brought courage and truth, and uncovered the lies. Perhaps the Year of the Snake shall bring back economic prosperity, or more truth, or more spiritual reality, which is greater anyway than the material wealth. I shall take my leave of you now. Thank you, God bless, and goodbye.